round 3 of the European Esports Community GT3WM and GT3 Cup multi-class Season 6, Round 3 at Silverstone. And you join us here for qualifying, which is just the one Cup entrance at this moment in time. Sebastian Valhalla in the Porsche Carrera Cup. You'll see that he is denoted by green on the map as and when we cycle away from him. Valhalla now in the Porsche, just finishing his first, not flying lap, is it? It's first, as you can see him weaving around there, formation warm-up lap around the Silverstone circuit, one of the only circuits and indeed one of the only arenas to go across 2 counties in the United Kingdom, in a place where the accent changes every 25 miles or so on average. Now, as he comes out of Luffield and through Woodcote down to start the first lap, Sebastian Valhalla, be interesting to see exactly what the time difference is between the Porsche Cup class and the GT3s that will be coming out in the second half of qualifying. So from minute 10 onwards here, Valhalla now through the Beckett's and Maggots complex there. Goes a little bit wide there for Valhalla, so we'll be unable to complete that lap time. That lap time may be invalidated there. Porsche looking very, very bouncy now, going down the hangar straight. Now he'll pull the car to the left-hand side, so surely the track naturally curves right anyway, so it's not actually that much of a violent swing now, as he needs to brake as late as possible, fling it in as late as possible for the straightest exit at Stoke. I want to go slightly wide there, so I suspect that this car, or this lap, will not count and will be considered as a sighter lap. Now through the club chicane, need to make sure that you don't hit the curb too hard on the inside there. Don't want to go too wide there, otherwise you'll lose a lap time as well. And on to the Formula 1 start finish straight, down the Hamilton straight before you head to Abbey. Now, you used to carry on straight before a quick chicane and through the bridge complex, but since 2010 we've had the new format, so through Village and Farm and into the Wellington Loop as he goes here now into the right hand, and must make sure that you're on the apex nice and early. Have a fairly straight run because you don't want to be too far wide for the left-hander on the loop as he runs slightly wide there. The Porsche not giving him everything he needs at this moment in time. Valhalla now down the Wellington straight, pulls the car to the left-hand side. I think this is going to be another warm-up lap because of the fact that the previous lap will not, or this lap will not count, as he's invalidated now through Luffield again. And let's see now Valhalla as he gets the car round Luffield. A very difficult, it's one of the most horrible corners on the entire game because it's just waiting and waiting and waiting. Try and get that power down now as he goes through Woodcote and to start another lap for Valhalla, the sole GT Porsche Cup entrant. So should be, provided that he finishes the winner today. And it'll be interesting to see, there's a couple of drivers that he may try and battle and match with throughout the race. I'm thinking possibly Bobby Hijazi, who is returned to the game after about a year and a half away in the number 6 Ford Mustang, which we'll see a little bit later on as he now builds up for another fly. Come to the end of the first sector, pulls the car to the left-hand side. Need to make sure that you're down a couple of gears, and then it's a patient waiting game. Don't stray too far from the apex at Stowe, and make sure as well that you keep it within the white lines, which he didn't yesterday or last lap, and he has done a little bit better this lap. That will be fine according to the game physics. Now, on the brakes, keep it in a straight line. Don't hit the sleeping policeman on the inside there. Hook the car round using the inside of that curb, and then fire off down the Hamilton straight. Go slightly wide there. Think you'll be fine there. GT3 track limits a little bit more relaxed than Formula 1 now as he chucks it through Abbey. Looks a little bit sideways through there, but I think he's got it all gathered up now as he fires his way from left to right into the Grand Prix loop. Keeps the car nicely to the inside. Runs slightly wide on the exit, but a slightly tighter apex for the Grand Prix loop. Before then, an acceleration zone with the Wellington curve down the Wellington straight. What's this going to be for Valhalla now as he comes to the end of the second sector, going well into the third sector actually, with the way that the Formula 1 sectors are. Just catching me out now there as he goes through Brooklands. A very long left-hander. You can actually brake deceptively late there because you spend so much time turning, it scrubs off the speed naturally. Luffield then, a bit of a waiting game to get onto the throttle. Car tries to break away, as he goes down to complete the lap now through Woodcote. He goes and across the line for 2 minutes and 2.4. So that should be a couple of seconds, I would have thought, off of the pace of the top GT3 runners, but not a bad marker at all. And that should put him right in between the stragglers, shall we say, for GT3. Obviously, the fledgling championship, this NCC, 9 competitors, including the erroneously marked spectator that is Luke Prentice, sorting his technical issues out as we speak now for Hawa, as he goes now for another go down to the hangar straight. He's got this and next lap, I would have thought, with 13 minutes left. So only 3 minutes for the GT Cup car to make it in. Back goes too wide there through Stowe, and I think that is another lap that's been invalidated there for Sebastian Vorhauer. And as I said earlier, interesting to see. I think he might be in the conversation with a couple of stragglers from the GT3 class. It'll be interesting to see exactly where he ends up now, as he goes now. Just keeps the rhythm up by going as hard as he can through Abbey and Farm now, before bringing it again to the Grand Prix loop. And we see now a car slightly wider entry compared to normal. Might just bring the car slightly further to the right side. Still has a pretty tight entrance into the left-hander at the Grand Prix loop. Kicks the back end out, and you don't want to be doing that on your next lap with only one lap to go. It's that if you're going sideways, you're not going forward. Kimi Räikkönen's it into the barriers there, but keeps it out of the wall down the Wellington straight, and then through Brooklands. As I say, very deceptive corner. You're turning so much, actually can brake relatively late, and you should be able to get good purchase into the final corner at Luffield. I say the final corner of the final event, really. Woodcote is now just an acceleration zone compared to what it was a few decades ago now. Across the line, the stays at 2 minutes 2.4. This is the final lap there for Vorhauer. How high can he get that GT Cup car, that Porsche Carrera Cup car, up into the rest of the field now? Goes through Maggots and Beckett, and this will be really the test for him. Keeps it nice and planted through Maggots. Then you've got the left-hander. Back end comes around slightly. He's off onto the grass. I don't know whether that will invalidate. His back end is again coming round as he finishes the complex and heads on to the hangar straight. Now, from Vorhauer, what are we going to see in terms of lap time? We won't know for another minute and a half or so as he brings the car down the hangar straight to the left-hand side, just spotting your braking point for Stowe. He flings it in, keeps the apex nice and calm, and actually probably the closest to within track limits. He stayed at Stowe Corner, keeps it in a straight line there for the braking zone at Club, misses the sleeping policeman. Back end still a little bit leery on the Porsche Cup car, but wanders his way to the outside through Club and Vale. Onto the Hamilton straight we go now, and it's the final sector for the old pit straight, which is what we're using here now, through Abbey and Farm. Is he going to bring the car to the left-hand side? Yes, he does. A nice wide entrance, wider than he's been before. Pulls the car to the inside. That's a slightly tighter exit, and so that should give him a little bit more space to go through the left-hander on the Grand Prix loop now. Fires his way through the Wellington curve, down the Wellington straight we go, and this is going to be the marker for the GT Cup class. Of course, the sole representative that is Sebastian Vorhauer, but interesting to see, as I said, quite where he ends up with 10 minutes gone. This will be, I suspect, the final lap as Celine, Margaret, Frentzen and Pearl all head out onto the track, along with Streppel in the Aston Martin as well. Car of 12, Luke Prentice still stuck in the pits, and Hijazi and Siska still yet to go out. As Vorhauer does cross the line and goes 1/10 of a second faster. That's a 2 minute 2.3 for Sebastian Vorhauer. Fires his way through the Copse Corner, the first corner, and as I suggest anyway, that is him done. But he's still giving it plenty, isn't he? So we shall see exactly where that puts him on the main grid, with the Apprentice now leaving. It's listed as a spectator, but he is in the British Racing Green Aston Martin, so may have a couple of trials and tribulations a little bit later on the lap, but that is him out, along with Hijazi, with Siska the last car to leave the BMW M4 as we go now to French in their car number 720 in the Ferrari, the sole Ferrari entrant there, matte black, all black Ferrari, very menacing indeed. Stuck behind a couple of other drivers. You've got Pearl just ahead in car number 86, and immediately ahead of him you've got Margaret in the Ford Mustang, the all-red Ford Mustang, which has been the car of choice, as you can see. 3 cars, if you don't include myself as the commentator, 3 cars in the field of 9 to adorn the Ford Mustang colours, and this is one of those. So 2 Ford Mustangs leading the field around, with the exception of Celine in the Aston Martin, and behind, in front of him, it's Streppel in the Aston Martin, car number 12, who showed a lot of pace earlier on at Kyalami a few weeks back, if you remember. Now fights his way through Woodcote to start this lap. We'll stay with Streppel as he crosses the line, with the Celine not too far behind, is he? So through Copse Corner we go. Keeps it nice and within track limits. That shouldn't bother the stewards too much. Bit of a more narrow entrance than the Porsche Cup car of Vorhauer, isn't it? Through the Beckett's and Baggett's, but this looks a lot more planted, doesn't it? Although not the quickest, so I wonder if he has made a bit of a mistake somewhere. He's got the Aston Martin of Celine not that far behind, the purple adorned Aston Martin, the blue and turquoise and purple behind, blue, turquoise and grey. Now through Stone Corner, misses the apex just a bit there, has a little bit of understeer that you sometimes get in the Aston Martin, but a good strong exit from Streppel out into Club Corner. So turns left through the club chicane. This is the sleeping policeman. Now this is Vale, the Vale curve, which is the final corner of the Formula 1 circuit, but of course we're just about halfway through in the GT3 Masters on ACC. So through Farm and Abbey we go, flat out right-hander. Flat out if you dare in the left for the left-hander. You've got a bit more understeer in the GT3 car, pulls the car to the left-hand side though for the entrance into the Grand Prix loop. Nice tight entrance there, runs slightly wider though coming out of that. That'll mean that his entrance into the left-hander is hampered, but now it's a full-on acceleration zone once again. The Streppel it down the Wellington straight in the Aston Martin, keeps the car fully over to the right-hand side. It's amazing how late you can brake in one of the GT3 cars. So you're on the brakes just about now. You can see the nose goes down. You just have to hug the inside, give yourself as much room as possible going into Luffield. Goes through Luffield now, has a bit of a V rather than U, so hopefully should be able to get the power down a little bit better and gain himself more time on the exit. Streppel goes across the line, and what's it going to be for the opening gambit for the GT3s? It is a 1:59 flat. That is 3.5 seconds clear of Vorhauer, with Celine just 0.3 of a second behind. So we're going to cut now to Pearl in the first of the Ford Mustangs. Now matte black, all black Ford Mustang, and here's a 1 minute 58.725. So that goes into pole position, with Margaret's 1.3 seconds off. Now we're going to go to car number 720. That is Frentzen in the Sol Ferrari, cutting it nicely through Woodcote. Where's it going to be? It's Ford, 1.2 seconds off the pace. We now cut to Luke Prentice, the home favourites here, British Racing Green Aston Martin, with a little bit of yellow trim there. Don't tell him I said that. Now crosses the line, and that is, well, he's ninth. I suspect he may have invalidated there, because it's not counting any of his lap times. There, as we've got Hijazi now crossing the line behind Siska. I think Siska's going to cross the line in the BMW M6. Across the line he goes through Woodcote, and where's this going to put him? It's going to put him 6th, 1.7 seconds off the pace, and that will do nicely as an opening gambit there as Hijazi crosses the line. Completely invalidated at this moment. It's answer for Hauer in the Porsche Cup car. 3.5 seconds off the pace at this moment in time, but we shall see what that means for him coming forwards and where he might end up on the grid. But it might be towards the back. He's already ahead of only 2 drivers, behind 6, but he's going to be banking those points there in the Cup class there, which, mind you, does have financial reward if you win. So a very useful hours exercise, even if he isn't going to be racing anybody technically. Now, the Streppel comes through the final complex there, going into Luffield there, keeps it again, fees the corner a little bit, misses the apex on purpose, I suspect, to try and get a better angle to exit the final corner. Now through Woodcote we go, acceleration zone that it now is, cross the line we go, and it is still second. He does improve slightly, but he drops to third because Celine behind him in a 1 minute 58.6. We didn't see it there. Car number 33 crosses the line, and that is great news for him. But Pearl crosses the line and immediately dishes out some more bad news there. Pearl in the matte black Ford Mustang. He goes pole in a 1 minute 58.297 with car number 131. That's Margaret, still 1.8 seconds off the pace as we go to 720. That's Frentzen. Frentzen goes up into third place, 0.6 of a second off of the lead, with the stablemate there, Pearl, to lead currently at this moment in time. You've got Siska now coming around. I think Luke Prentice disappeared for the moment. I think he's doing a little bit of setup work here, but he's not got much time to get back out there, is he? Because he's still in the pits and he's still currently last at this moment in time. We've got Siska now coming out of Luffield in the BMW, the sole BMW representative, car number 291, fires his way over the line. And what's it going to be for Siska? It's going to be fifth place, 1.6 seconds off the pace, deposes Margaret from fifth place, and that is a very useful lap time from the BMW driver with Hijazi now over the line in eighth, 6.2 seconds off the pace, which means that he is a couple of seconds off of Sebastian Vorhauer. You've got Luke Prentice still stuck in the pits. I wonder if he's going to be going back out, because if he is, with a 2 minute lap effectively, he's not leaving himself an awful lot of time, is he? So we're going to go back to Strappel now. It doesn't look like it's been the greatest lap, because visibly the car behind him, Celine, looks a little bit closer, doesn't he? They are separated by 0.4 of a second. And Strappel now is making his way through the final complex into Luffield. Again, goes slightly past the apex, a little bit further past than before, which could work one of two ways. Could give him more straight to attack, or it could mean more distance, which means it costs him more time. Through Woodcote we go, across the line, and it's no improvement there. 0.7 of a second off. Same can be said for Celine behind him. But what about Pearl? Pearl once again looking menacing in that matte black, all black Ford Mustang. Crosses the line, 1 minute 58.1, lowers the bar just a little bit. As we've got Margaret now crossing the line in the other Ford Mustang. 2 seconds off the pace, no longer. He's a second off the pace now in fifth place. And that puts him right in amongst the podium talk, the podium area, with Frentzen still 0.7 of a second off in the Ferrari car number 720. With now car 291, that's Siska once again. Got to find 0.75 of a second in order to topple Margaret to gain himself a place. So Siska, a lot riding on this if he can get this right between now and the end of the session. Slightly different line, isn't it? More of a U shape compared to a V shape, the apex, although I think that might be him done. He's coming into the pits, and he will not have time to get back out. So Hijazi we go to now, coming out of Luffield, across the line in the Ford Mustang, and it's been a real baptism of fire for Hijazi, the league admin, but not quite in the ballpark of the other drivers, although deposes Warhauer, so he's up into 7th, 4.1 seconds off the pace, finds a massive 2 seconds. If he improves at that rate, he may well be on the back of Siska going forwards now, as we've got back to Strappel we go. Needs to find nearly a second in order to get back onto pole position, which he took briefly before being deposed by Celine. Celine now in second place, just behind car number 12, Strappel. This might be it. 20 seconds to go. I don't fancy it'll get round again, but we'll see. Well, I think he might actually. 15 seconds just coming out of Luffield. I think he's got this and next lap, so he might not be drinking in the last chance saloon. Crosses the line. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. He's across the line. He's safe, and he's P3 at the moment, just behind Celine. Deposes Frentzen. Celine gets into second place and has another go at this, but the first of the drivers to finish is Pearl, and Pearl sets a 1 minute 57.8, so well into the 1 minute 57s for Pearl in the Ford Mustang. Car number 131 is Margaret. She crosses the line, cannot improve on fifth place, with car 720 Frentzen next across the line, or next into the pits, because the Ferrari has had a bad lap somewhere, and into the pits he comes. He will start no higher than fourth, with Siska in the pits as well, and I think that is all she wrote, because the other two have invalidated at some point else, and we've got, or have they, because it's knocked that out. So let's go back out to see what the situation is. While Celine is in the pits, it's Pearl, I think. Yeah, I don't think any other driver's going to be coming round. There's a yellow flag. That is Hijazi, who is now in the pits. and it's just for car number 131, which is Margaret, to get back over the line, and Pearl to get back over the line. Although that is all she wrote for qualifying, we're going to take a quick break.
Just opening this out.
All I can say is a truly stunning
Hello and welcome back to coverage of the European esports community GT3 Weltmeister and the Porsche Cup multi-class. We're in Season 6, we're at Round 3, and we are at Silverstone, and we are a minute away from the formation lap, but the drivers have sorted their strategies and determined what their plan is for the 1 hour and 15 minutes of racing that we are going to get at the world-famous Silverstone circuit. So, we are going to take you through with Pearl on pole in the Ford Mustang, car number 86, with Celine in second in the Aston Martin, car number 33, the blue, turquoise and purple Aston Martin, his stablemate Streppel in the blue, turquoise and grey Aston Martin, which is behind, with Frentzen behind in the matte black Ferrari. It's Margaret in fifth in the red Ford Mustang, which you'll see on the formation lap, with Siska in sixth in the sole BMW, the BMW M4 GT3, with Hijazi seventh in the GT3 class 7 of 8 drivers, with Luke Prentice unable to set a lap time due to technical issues preventing him from being able to complete his lap. They are sandwiching Sebastian Vorhauer in the Porsche Carrera Cup, car number 25, with Hijazi having to start from the pit lane, hasn't quite readied up in time, so he'll be starting from the pit lane. He'll have to wait now for the drivers to go through COPS and pass the pit exit before he's allowed to set off from his pit bay. So, a bit of a difficult one for Hijazi there, as he will now be not on the grid, which will consist of 8 cars, with Vorhauer, as you can see there, the sole Porsche Cup representative, with the drivers on their formation laps. So some drivers you'll see are weaving and trying to get some warm-up into their tyres. Some drivers going a little bit more cautious, as you can see here. You can see here with Pearl in the 86 Mustang, who is taking it very, very sedately, isn't he? Now, they have to stick to a minimum time. There'll come a point where the game will actually port them to the pits if they're too slow for an extended period of time. So the drivers behind, so that's Celine and Streppel, can't hang around too much and wait for the driver ahead to get so far ahead that he then has to make his tyres cold. But waiting, they have to stay roughly within that window. You've got Celine in second in the Aston Martin, car number 33, the blue, turquoise and purple car, as we said earlier on. With Streppel there, you can get a bit of a better view in the blue, turquoise and grey Aston Martin. They are just ahead of Frentzen in car number 720, at least at 120. They're car number 720, which is the Ferrari. So Frentzen there is the sole Ferrari, isn't he? And just a couple of tenths or so off of second and third in qualifying, with Pearl having a bit of an advantage over the two directly behind him. But in the Mustang, that should be fairly quick on the straight line, so that should make sure that he's pretty difficult to attack, certainly early on. Now, Margaret is in the red part of 131, the gloss. I think it's a gloss, or is that more of a clear chrome? It is more clear chrome, isn't it? In the red and black Ford Mustang, car number 131, with Siska in the BMW, the more striking white, red and blue BMW livery that we've become accustomed to seeing. Now, it's not showing Luke Prentice as ahead of Hijazi, but he will be, with Vorhauer in seventh, having overtaken him. Luke Prentice having a few difficulties to accidentally entering as a spectator. That may have been my fault in the chat earlier, but they are looking to try and speak to Hijazi. I think he's had a couple of issues to try and sort that out for him. So let's see what happens here, as Luke Prentice there listed as ninth in the Aston Martin British Racing Green car. Still goes through his warm-up. We'll see if that lasts, with Pearl now leading the cars around. And this will be the point when they start to form up. It won't be too much longer down the Wellington Straight that we have Pearl and then Celine starts to line up and go side by side, with then Streppel and Frentzen in to make row 2, as we'll see now as they start to sort of form up now. To the inside, Frentzen goes. Margaret, by the way, is now in 5th position. He goes to the outside at this moment in time, so he'll be starting on the right side. There's Luke Prentice being the last of the late breakers. Well, you can do that when you're at the back and you're already in formation, so he's going to get some last minute warmth into those tyres. Doesn't want to be too far out of position, as he will get a drive-through penalty. So, as we are now just waiting, and Pearl waits and waits and waits. He leads the cars at roughly 40 miles an hour, which is as slow as it looks here. Pearl trying to see if he can eke out an advantage over Celine as they go through Woodcote. And this is the tense moment, because as soon as that green light, the leader doesn't control this, as soon as the green light happens, you go, and if you miss it, you miss it. So as they go across the line, waiting for the start-finish line, and we are ready. No, we're not. And we are ready, as we get to the start line, and that is go, go, go. And that's Pearl making a great start now. Can he shield, can he stave off the efforts of Celine? Celine goes around the outside, but has to settle in behind the Mustang. It's a Ferrari that's got ahead. I think it's a poor start there for Streppel. Streppel's dropped back a couple of places, already behind Frentzen, with Margaret having gone up into 5th position. Luke Prentice looks like he's making moves on what looks to me to be Siska, who's lost out to Forhawa, with Jazi having joined the race at the back. So we'll see exactly how far he gets up as they go into the first sector. That's Pearl leading Celine ahead of Streppel back into 3rd position. So we'll see as ACC does its thing. It's Pearl there up into 1st position, with Celine in 2nd and Frentzen in 3rd position. It doesn't look like Luke Prentice's technical issues have resolved themselves, so he may drop out because he's up into 6th or 7th position, but showing as a spectator still. So Hijazi's still there, showing at the back there. Luke Prentice is 7th, and he's ahead of Siska, with Forhawa now. Sebastian Forhawa in the Porsche Cup car, I must remind you, the sole remaining Cup entrant. He is in 6th position overall, which is certainly a good look for the Austrian in the only, as I think that's Margaret now rejoining the track, and he's just lost out once again to Streppel. Streppel already on the redemption mark, having lost a couple of places early on. That is Margaret now dropping back into 5th position. So Burley is still in pole position ahead of Celine. 0.8 of a second he has as the gap. The Aston Martin not going away just yet, although he's going to have more problems behind with Frentzen. Half a second back less than. So the Ferrari, what's he going to do? Well, he's going to go have a little look down the inside, but he's never going to get anything there, especially with Celine's penchant for making a slightly longer straight coming out of Luffield. So pole it is across the start-finish line for the first lap completed in this 75-minute race. So pole leads by a second ahead of Celine, with Frentzen 0.3 of a second behind in 3rd position. Streppel, meanwhile, 1.3 seconds back, with Margaret in 5th position, and Siska 2 seconds back. So Siska's still got Luke Prentice to sort out, although Luke Prentice, he is 6th, but it's not showing as such at the moment, with Forhawa now having been relieved of 6th position and now dropping back into 8th. It will be on the road with Hijazi back in last place there, 12.6 seconds off the pace. I think there might be a bit of a race there between him and Forhawa as this goes on. Pole, meanwhile, leads from Celine now by 1.2 seconds, with Frentzen still half a second back in the Ferrari, but the Ferrari not the quickest in a straight line. So you may find it a bit more difficult to then get past the Aston Martin. So Streppel as well, 1.1 seconds back. He's still got Margaret behind him, who's only half a second back. And Siska there, having finally deposed of Forhawa, 2.5 seconds back off of the pace, with the erroneous Luke Prentice in 7th position, just in 6th position, just ahead of him. So Pole still stretching that gap out. We're just going to see exactly how far he's got ahead in the black AC6 Ford Mustang there. Just weaves his way through the Grand Prix loop, and the Ford's real strength is the traction and the sheer grunt down the straights. In fact, he's still got 0.2 of a second on Celine, even in the slightly more twisty bit at Silverstone. So 0.6 of a second between Celine and Friends, and that might be where the battle is for the remainder of the race, with Pearl looking to stretch a gap and looking in Imperial's form after only 2 laps. So Celine there now 0.6 of a second clear of Frentzen, who's not making as much of an impression there as it would seem, only 0.6 behind. Streppel there actually might be catching him a little bit more than Frentzen is on Celine, although I say that, half a second it remains as Streppel now drops a couple of tenths back, with Siska still in well, he's 3.5 seconds off the back of this battle, even though obviously it's not counting Luke Prentice's laps as a spectator. We'll see exactly how this goes. So Pearl there purple lap, so fastest lap, 1.3 seconds clear of Celine, and it's just going to be for the Ford Mustang about building that gap. While Celine can see him, and see him clearly, then Pearl isn't safe. So 1.5 seconds, 1.3 seconds, it was 1.1 seconds, it now is the Aston Mighty in the first sector because he's gained 4 or 5 tenths on Frentzen. We don't know whether there was any issues there, but the Aston Martin, certainly the big mover in the opening sector of lap 3, with Streppel 1.2 seconds back from Frentzen as well, would suggest that both of the Astons are certainly proving their worth in sector 1. We'll see if it lasts, because Pearl, having looked imperious in qualifying and certainly the early parts of the race, is now facing a bit of a challenge from Celine. Streppel there, meanwhile, holding off the attentions of Margaret in the second Ford Mustang, the 131 red glossy car. Certainly one of the more striking cars on the grid, with a sea of blue and black. This one represents a welcome change, and let's see if he can use that brighter colour to good advantage now. Although he has dropped a couple of tenths in the second sector behind Streppel, with Celine 1.2 seconds now off the back of Pearl, so hasn't really lost out much, because it was only 1.1 in the second sector, having gained a mammoth amount of time in sector 1. So here is Celine, and he's with the Aston Martin favouring the slightly sort of tighter line, in which he can sort of turn it a bit more aggressively but have a slightly longer straight. Let's see if it works. It's 1.4 seconds, so the Mustang gets away in the straights in the final sector, with Frentzen there 0.9 seconds back. I wonder if it might be a Celine specific issue, although Streppel also dropping back by a good half second relative to Frentzen around the rest of the lap. So Pole in the lead there. We'll just focus on the lead just for the moment, with Pearl car number 86. What are we, 7 minutes into the race? So certainly a very young race at this moment in time. So we've got Pearl and Celine as the lead duo, with Frentzen in third ahead of Streppel in fourth, Margaret in fifth, only half a second behind Streppel, so we'll have to probably focus on this a little bit later on as the race develops. Siska is behind Luke Prentice in sixth, with Luke Prentice still serving as a spectator. We don't know whether his times will count a little bit later on. Now, it's time for me to talk, if I may, just about the one. You can see the window, the yellow window next to all of the drivers' car numbers, and you can see a number 1 in there. That's because they have a mandatory pit stop with with mandatory refueling and with an optional tyre change, but there is a pit window, so you can't just make your pit stop within the first 10 minutes and you can't make it within the final 10 minutes. You have to stop within the middle 40 minutes, so minute 20 thereabouts to minute, I think it's the middle 35, so minute 20 to minute 50, when you have to come and make that pit stop. Otherwise you're outside of the window and it doesn't count. And if you do miss the pit stop, well, you get a stop-go penalty, and effectively your race is done if you're not disqualified. Well, Harman now having dropped a little bit off the back of Siska, but he's got Hijazi still about 12 seconds behind. Yeah, so it's going to be a bit more of a battle between these two. Hijazi just about chipping away, and Luke Prentice is obviously not in ninth. He's just behind Margaret, and we shall try and see if we can monitor any battles, which will be difficult when you can't see his timing. Wonder if he might be cruising around anyway, just to see if Sim Grid, as he does exceed track limits there by quite some distance, just to see if Sim Grid will allow him to keep that place. Right, we have a battle for second, because Frentzen 1/10 of a second behind Celine. Celine has dropped about a second and a half. In fact, Celine goes wide. We might not have a battle for second anymore, because Frentzen goes around the outside. Celine running wide onto the grass, coming down onto the Hanger straight, and that is candy from a baby for Frentzen there. So up into second place, 3.5 seconds now behind Pearl. He's got some work to do if he wants to do anything about Pearl ahead in the immediate future, but Celine, bit of a mistake there from the Aston Martin, drops into third position. He'll be disappointed with that. Streppel, meanwhile, in his, the stablemate, still a couple of seconds behind, and he's still got attention from Margaret. Margaret only 7/10 of a second behind, with Luke Prentice there about the same behind, ahead of Siska. Siska 4.5 seconds off of the back of Margaret, so not really a factor in this race at this moment in time. But that was good driving there from Frentzen. Frentzen waited for the mistake and was in a position where he could capitalise rather easily. Celine, to his credit, didn't do anything silly. He certainly didn't try and run him off the road. He certainly didn't try and block. He didn't drive aggressively once he realised he made the mistake. Good driving all round from the two. While he'll be disappointed with that mistake, it's not race ending, and he'll certainly be able to still go racing from third. He's got Streppel behind, so a little bit more protection with those two in the same stable. Although Celine runs slightly wide again through Brooklands. It's been a bit of an error-strewn lap here from Celine. I wonder if he's just a little bit out of rhythm. Back end still snaking around, so rear tyres won't be liking that. With Streppel now behind, and is he going to attack or is he going to try and protect? I wonder if he might attack with Margaret now still less than a second behind. He might wish to get the move done, with Celine now dropping 2 seconds off the back of Frentzen and 6 off of the leader. I suspect that he may be coming under attack from Streppel in the next couple of corners if Streppel can get there. So Streppel now 4/10 of a second behind, and let's see, it doesn't look, it looks like it's grown a little bit, so it looks like Celine might have just refocused. We'll see as they go into the first, at the end of the first sector. Yeah, 2 seconds behind Frentzen, but 7/10 ahead of Streppel, so he's managed to stabilise that gap. Margaret, meanwhile, still hustling the back of Streppel, with Luke Prentice there just about a second behind in the lesser spotted Aston Martin, I think it's fair to say, with Streppel there looking on the inside. Was he defending there perhaps a little bit from Margaret? I'm sure that he was. Certainly, if he was, it was a little bit unwise, but he was certainly pulled out to the inside just a little bit ahead or behind Celine. Celine doesn't look like he's holding him up too much, although he has only been back on the circuit for about a lap and a half after his shenanigans from the last couple of laps there. Margaret there looking very racy on the brakes in that Ford Mustang. It is good on the brakes, that red Mustang. Certainly has a very good stopping power, so I wonder if he might be fancying a run at the Aston Martin anytime soon. Well, it does look like he's lost a little bit through the twisty section, so Margaret there in 5th position is going to stay 5th for the moment. Margaret there in the, he's got a double threat, although not as much of a double threat, it must be said, as Streppel. Streppel not only is he trying to attack ahead with Celine, again leery off the exit of Luffield. That will provide more than enough encouragement for Streppel and Margaret to have a go, although I don't think they're going to make it into Copse Corner. Not enough of a braking zone here, but he might be able to force more of a mistake there. Celine losing another second to Frentzen thereabouts on that lap just gone, and Streppel goes defensive, go onto the into Beckett's and Mackett's. Now Margaret tucks in, but that's a bit of a warning sign, isn't it? The Astons both getting bogged down there, and the Mustang nearly profiting from the two Aston Martins issues, let's say, going through Copse Corner. Now Margaret's there, and there's a bit of a train here for them behind Celine, with Streppel tucking in behind and Margaret following the tow. He's got Luke Prentice behind as well. Luke Prentice, as we've discovered already, its laps aren't counting as a spectator, but meanwhile, more immediately as a spectators, they will be loving life at the moment, because Streppel goes wide, Margaret goes around the outside going into club. Now, are they going to leave each other enough room? Streppel certainly does. Margaret claims the apex of fail, and he's through, and so is Luke Prentice. Luke Prentice goes down the inside and into 5th position. Spalding says there Streppel has dropped to 6th, but Luke Prentice now is attacking Margaret. He tucks in behind the Mustang going through Abbey, and he's going to have a go going into the Grand Prix loop. I fancied that the Aston Martin may do a bit of a Hail Mary. No, goes around the outside. Let's see if he can outbrake him there. Still keeps his nose in, and is he going to be able to launch it down the inside? He does. I fear that might have been a bit optimistic there from Luke Prentice. He'll say that his nose was there and he was alongside enough at the apex, but Margaret turns in, and there's a bit of a half spin, and Luke Prentice does get away for the moment. But I wonder if he might let Margaret go. Margaret there looking very devilish in that Ford Mustang there in the red Carnival 131. And I think that's all this has given actually Celine a little bit of breathing space, and Celine needs that because of the issues that he's been having in that Aston Martin. So 5 seconds the lead gap between Pearl and Frentzen, with Celine at 3.8 seconds back, and Margaret and Luke Prentice a further 3 odd seconds behind. Luke Prentice, it's not showing, but he is currently 4th on the road, with Margaret in 5th position, despite what it says there, and Streppel dropped to 6th, although I wonder if there might be some consequences there for that contact between Prentice and Margaret going into the Grand Prix loop, the tight left-hander. The opportunity was certainly there. He certainly had a nose on the inside. He wasn't exactly subtle about where he was going. Had the nose overlapping, but Margaret will say, well, I had to turn in at some point, and it's something there that I'm sure the stewards will have to consider there. Meanwhile, in between Margaret and Streppel to 1 second, everything's all spread out a little bit, although Hijazi is starting to catch the cup car that is Sebastian Vorhauer. Vorhauer he's the sole Porsche Cup car entrant for today, which means that he's going to take quite a substantial advantage in the championship, but obviously can be pretty lonely when you're racing just effectively in a class of your own. So all he's got to do is keep going and effectively have a nice Monday evening drive. Vorhauer, the Austrian, who had appeared in the GT3 class Kyle Army before the decision was made to merge the two championships, and is going rather well, thank you, isn't he, in the Porsche Cup, because obviously he is the sole entrant, which means that he will be taking a big advantage into the championship. But it's all looking rather sweet, irrespective of that. With the car that's 4 seconds thereabouts off the pace, he's doing rather a good job to be, at my estimate, about half a minute off the pace. So good driving from Vorhauer, who had looked strong in GT3 in the sole race that he did at Kyle Army, and he's doing rather well here. He's about half a minute, it's about 45 seconds thereabouts. So doing rather well to stay that with, like we say, about 15 minutes gone, starting a little bit further back and obviously get stuck on lap 1. He's doing an excellent job, I think, in terms of trying to keep Hijazi, who had to start from the pit lane, at bay. Hijazi's taken 3 seconds off him since he got out of the pit, so he's chipping away. Bob Hijazi, who's new effectively to the game. He's back after nearly 2 years on the sidelines, and let me tell you, it is a bit of a culture shock. So we're going to go back to the lead. We're not going to go back to the lead because Margaret is attacking Luke Prentice. Now this could be fireworks. Margaret goes around the outside through Stowe, can't get through there, goes into the chicane at Vale and Club, and still no die there. Luke Prentice there getting his elbows out in the British Racing Green Aston Martin. I wonder if there might be a little bit more needle here with obviously the collision from before. They're both starting to catch Salim once again. Slowly but surely, and Margaret's now defending and attacking because Streppel wants his position back. He'd lost a couple of places before, and now let's see if he can exact a bit of revenge on Margaret. I can promise you that he is currently 5th on the road with Prentice in 4th, despite the fact he's signed in as a spectator. That might be my fault, for those of you who weren't here earlier. But Prentice there getting away down the straight in the Aston Martin. It might well be that he's going to try and target catching Salim, and then maybe making this a 4-way battle rather than a 3-way battle, with the two out front fairly settled. Pearl now entering lap 10 in the Ford Mustang. We have to sort of check that he's the leader. He deserves a little bit of airtime. With Frenton in the similarly matte black Ferrari, with a little bit more damage on the front there, it looks like, a couple of scratches there. The Ferrari 7 seconds off and 5 seconds clear of Salim. Margaret 4 seconds back and a position further back there with Luke Prentice right in front of him in the British Racing Green Aston Martin, with the other Aston Martin of Streppel following just behind Margaret. So we'll keep on this battle just for a moment and we'll take a quick break. We are going to cut short that break very quickly indeed, because Margaret goes down the outside, tries to get the crisscross, tries to get the switcheroo on Prentice, but Prentice is going to have the inside for Club Corner. Margaret now goes around the outside, and Prentice there, he holds on just for the moment, doesn't deviate from the inside, doesn't outbrake himself, and hangs on rather well, with Margaret there in the Ford Mustang, not able to use the extra power from Stowe into club. It's a fairly short run, so unable for him to take full advantage. But Margaret there in the Mustang is going to have another go down the inside, isn't he? And doesn't quite manage to on this occasion. But with Streppel behind, he's got to make sure he gets this right. And if he doesn't quite make the pass, he's got to make sure he doesn't leave himself too vulnerable from attack, or to attack from the Aston behind. The Aston all tenths of a second back. So certainly within striking distance, with the Aston being so good on the brakes, but the Mustang equally good machinery on the brakes, it must be said, even if he's come from high speed. So through Brooklands they go, and it's again as he were for 4th, 5th and 6th, with Margaret currently 5th spot, it says, with the issues shown for Luke Prentice there as the pit window is open. So 20 minutes into the race, 35 minutes to come in and make your stop. And I wonder if one of these might try and do an undercut, although if you do, you've got nearly an hour around one of the most demanding tracks on tyres on the entire game. Meanwhile, if you pull, you rake seconds out front, it doesn't really matter, does it? You know, he's got such a lead. We saw this with Verstappen last night. He's got such a lead that he can pretty much do what he wants. He doesn't have to pit early at all, because only a monumental error is going to cost him the lead. Unless he has an accident or spins off or crashes, only a monumental pit error is going to see him shake out behind. He's stretching the gap now to 8.1 seconds. And he had half a second on the rest of the field in qualifying, and that form very much showing itself here, with him retaining the lead and now having Abel back up in front and behind, 8.2 seconds behind in the Ferrari. We'll see him now in the jet black, matte black Ferrari. Celine, meanwhile, 5.5 seconds back, and he's starting to lose time once again to the 3 behind. So he's 3.5 seconds clear of Margaret. Margaret is in 5th position and is only 6 cents ahead of Streppel in 6th, with Luke Prentice the hole in the middle, quite frankly. He's about 3 seconds behind Celine, and Celine, who's had a few leery moments, especially coming out of Luffield, the Aston certainly not suiting him in race trim, and I suspect that 3 might become 4 for the final podium spot in the not too distant future, because half a second roughly between Prentice and Margaret, with Streppel 0.7 seconds behind, making a slightly different line through Brooklands into Luffield. And as we see here, the British Racing Green Aston Martin is coming in straight away. So as early as he can, Prentice pits, and I wonder if that might be to get himself into some fresh air and not have to worry about traffic. Whilst he had a gap of 3 seconds in front, he did. As he comes to a stop now, I wonder if he's had issues with the pit entrance. We'll see if that manifests itself. It will be a bit of a disaster, really, given the other issues he's had. We'll see what happens here, as he's currently dropped into what is 7th position, with Vorhauer in the Porsche 8th overall, but leading, because he's the sole representative, the Porsche Cup class. So good job from Vorhauer. He's dropped another couple of seconds in the last 10 or so minutes ahead of Hijazi, but this could be the battle a little bit later on. Streppel, meanwhile, talking of a battle, half a second behind Margaret now for what is 4th position on the road. Streppel there runs slightly wide in the Aston Martin, car number 12. They're certainly getting a little bit more antsy, although they are both starting to catch Celine. Celine's hit strife, isn't he? Something's not right with that car. Hasn't been since the start, really, if truth be told, because it's only 2.5 seconds ahead of Margaret, and Margaret has, oh dear, it's goes from bad to worse for Luke Prentice. He sped, but I think he sped out because he has a drive-through penalty, and so that could be challenge for podium over for Luke Prentice there in the Aston Martin. So drive-through penalty, a bit disastrous, really, for the home favourite, who was having a bit of an accident there. That is, I think, purely frustration. So he's gone off, and I suspect that might be race done, with Prentice there having what could best be described as a tumultuous return to the championship after last week. He is back in the pits, having not served his drive-through, and I think that is him out of the race. So Prentice has left the server, so I think that is his race done after the drive-through. What was actually really entertaining battle shaping up there. It's going to be a bit difficult now, obviously, to track. Well, we've got Celine, and we've got Margaret, and we've got Streppel. What would have been four for the podium is now 3. Margaret still gaining on Celine. Now 2.2 seconds. It was 2.5 at the start of last lap, and Streppel going with him, all over him like a cheap suit. And not staying away from the back of Margaret. Margaret there won't be disappointed to see the back of Luke Prentice following their earlier travails. And now we can concentrate a little bit more forward with Streppel having dropped off the back in the first sector. I wonder now, with Celine just about to complete the first sector, Margaret following in short order. Yeah, it's another 0.2 of a second. So he's got half a second back now to Streppel. Streppel lost 0.4 in the first sector, which is fairly easy, to be fair, when you're following a GT3 car behind with all the weight and turbulence that they have. And Margaret there now beginning to put together a challenge for Celine. Celine has to re-engage here with the back end of that Aston Martin being slightly fruity, it must be said. Are we going to see a titanic battle for the podium in the European esports community, the GT3 Cup class? So the GT3 class, with the Cup class, with its sole representative of Sebastian Vorhauer still in the race. He's about 6 seconds clear of Hijazi. We'll just have a look now with Bobby Hijazi just finishing the first sector. And I say, no, it's 8 seconds. So he's had a couple of issues there since we last saw. And I must say, it is an incredible achievement for him to be back and competing in this championship, because 2 years without having played the game, it is a really difficult game to get back into. So kudos there, and kudos for not giving up when he's a little bit further off the back compared to the rest of the class. But keeping going, it says an awful lot about him. So we've got Pearl now, still in pole position in the race, leading by 10 seconds. That's Frentzen there behind, who's settled into second. I don't think he's got ideas about getting the lead unless some serious issues happen to stay up ahead. Celine, meanwhile, well, it's 1.5 seconds, isn't it? So we could get a titanic battle between Celine, Margaret and Streppel. And this really would be one for the ages, with Streppel still half a second, 0.6 of a second behind Margaret, and Celine dropping backwards from second and dropping into the clutches of 4th place. Margaret now has got plenty of time to plan this, you'll see, because it's been a sustained... It's not just been one lap where he's caught him all over the place. It's been a sustained 4 or 5 laps. He has been starting to catch Celine, so we'll see exactly where he's quicker, and he'll see exactly where the Mustang isn't as strong. In fact, the Mustang loses 0.3 of a second in Sector 1. Celine responds in Sector 1 through the twisty bits, which the Aston Martin has done throughout this race. So half an hour in, for example, the Aston Martin has shown itself to be a bit stronger in the first sector when it's had clear air. But we'll see now exactly where Margaret is quicker if Sector 2 goes as I expect it might. More straights going down the Hangar Straight, obviously, and through the Hamilton Straight into the Warbury Loop. I suspect that Margaret might have a little bit more to say. 1.8 seconds the gap so far. 11 seconds is the lead gap, with Frentzen having just completed Sector 2. Celine now is just about to finish that, and it's 1.7 seconds. So Margaret there not taking that much time out of him. So it's been a good lap for Celine so far, although here is where Celine has had issues. So we'll go back to him to see if slightly wide through Brooklands means a tighter entrance into Luffield. Doesn't quite take the same line as he had before, which might be a bit of a blessing, because he had been taking the line where he would go a little bit further, a little bit deeper into Luffield, and then turn more aggressively and fire out. That was where the back end was going. But 7.5 seconds, 1.8 seconds behind. So, 0.3 of a second gained by Celine that lap, and it's a response, although he does then follow that up by running wide at Copse Corner. Meanwhile, he's human, because Pearl has lost a 10th to Frentzen in the second sector. I'm sure it's not something he'll be concerned about, but it does prove that he is human, and it does prove that he is not the perfect driver that we have seen so far today, although he has then responded by gaining 0.6 of a second in Sector 1. I just thought it worth pointing out that Pearl had lost some time, and that there was maybe a 1% chance of a race out in front. It's not going to happen, because Pearl at the moment is in imperious form. He can put the kettle on and have a cup of tea when he comes into the pits a little bit later on. 26 minutes left of the pit window, a 35-minute window, so it's been open for 9 minutes. Celine, meanwhile, back in trouble, isn't he? Because he's lost half a second. I was just saying about how fast the Aston Martin is in Sector 1, and he responds by losing half a second in his Aston in Sector 1 to show exactly what I don't know. So, Celine in the Aston Martin having a bit of a difficult time, isn't he, of Sector 1, having qualified so well in second place. It's just race pace hasn't quite been there for the Aston Martin. Margaret, meanwhile, 1.2 seconds behind, and a second clear now of Matthias Streppel. Streppel now second behind, yes, 1.5 seconds now. So it's Celine has gained a couple of tenths in the second sector. He's responded somewhat. Streppel has still dropped off the back, so I wonder if Margaret might be having his own dramas here. Going to have a look at Celine through the final sector, because it has been historically where he struggled. Slightly better line, runs a little bit wider, but is the back end going to be able to live with it? Understeers wide just a little bit, keeps it on the black stuff just about on the curb. Cuts the corner through Woodcut, and let's see what happens here. So 7.7 seconds the gap ahead, and yeah, 1.5, so only lost a couple of tenths after what was looking to be a really difficult first sector. German responds well, so Margaret there not having it all his own way in the battle for third position. Fairly well spread out now between Streppel, Margaret and Celine, with Vorhauer in the Porsche Cup, and I have to keep saying this, he is the only Porsche Cup representative, which means that he will be winning come what may, but he is at least taking it seriously, so fair play to him. Ajazi has gained another half a second, so it's 7.6 seconds. Ajazi having started in the pit lane, as was 12 seconds back at the start, so may be able to catch Vorhauer just at the end here, although that might well be a battle for pride and pride only. But action's what we need to see, and action's what we love to see. 1.7 seconds the gap now between third and fourth. I wonder if Celine might just have stabilised that a little bit. With Streppel there a further 1.5 seconds back. The Aston certainly better in the second half of its stint compared to the first half, because he really was struggling. He's starting to move forwards, albeit not significantly. He started to move forward relative to Frentzen, and he started to gain on him to half a second in the last couple of laps. But, as I said, not particularly noteworthy, with Frentzen 12.8 seconds off the lead of Pearl. That Mustang just seems to be getting quicker and quicker. We'll switch to him now and give him a little bit of airtime, because it is worth saying, I know I took the mick a little bit earlier on, it is worth saying just what a job Pearl is doing in that Ford Mustang, which is not necessarily the car of choice to have around Silverstone. So real kudos there for Pearl, with just over half of the race to go. Real kudos there for Pearl in the Ford Mustang to be pulling away at the rate of about half a second a sector as we get to the middle phase of the Grand Prix, with Celine behind, not making anywhere near as much of an impact. Margaret is pitted in the Mustang, so he might be coming. I wonder if he's coming in for tyres, or will he gamble and take the 5 second saving that you get by not putting tyres on to see if he can jump Celine and Streppel. It needs to be a really good pit stop, otherwise it falls flat on its face, with Streppel and Celine now separated by 3 seconds. This is where we see the different strategies at point, because if you take tyres around a track like this, you'll be quicker, much quicker at the end. But if you get track position, especially if you're in a Ford Mustang, you might actually be able to hold them off, because whilst you're not going to be the quickest in the corners, your car's still going to be pretty quick down the straight. So Margaret we'll see exactly where he is when he leaves the pits. He's still there at the moment, with Vorhauer coming across the line now. I wonder if he might just be coming out. He needs to make sure that he doesn't lose too much time behind the Porsche Cup car, with Margaret still in the pits, so 30 seconds. Yeah, he's just left now, so he won't lose an awful lot of time behind Vorhauer. Bit slow leaving though, isn't he? Hijazi comes around Cop's corner, and that's going to be something for Margaret to look out for, because he's out about 4 seconds by the time it shakes out, 3 or 4 seconds behind Hijazi, so they'll probably have caught him within a lap and a half or so. Margaret now exiting the pits, and this is where we're going to see exactly what the best strategy was. Margaret now needs to get those tyres warmed up pretty quickly, otherwise he's not going to have any kind of advantage. Doesn't look like the others are going to respond at this moment in time. His friend said, well, I might say that a little bit early, because he got to the pit exit or pit entrance just at this moment in time. Celine, meanwhile, dropping a little bit further back from the friend, since that mini challenge is over and done. Streppel is still 2.5 seconds back in the Aston Martin, struggling on his tyres a little bit more at this phase of the race, but we've got Streppel now coming into the pit, so he has decided to try and cover off Margaret, who won't realise that he's still 3 seconds behind Hijazi, and it indeed looks like he's followed his teammate in. So Celine and Streppel both pit. Siska, meanwhile, carries on his merry way and goes up into 3rd position in the BMW. So it's 3rd place there for Siska, who's had a bit of an anonymous race since the earlier knockings, and at the moment Siska is he's playing his way in nicely. It might well be that he can pick up a couple of scraps which can't get left. We saw a little bit of beating and banging between Prentice and Margaret a little bit earlier on, so it might well be that that's still to come. If he keeps himself out of trouble, no reason why he can't have a good finish. Frenton, meanwhile, 15 seconds off of the back of Pearl, which sounds a lot, but when you're as imperious as Pearl is, it's not really, because Pearl has been in a class of 1, hasn't he? As he goes now into the Grand Prix loop, and we're going to see now whether or not Margaret, who's just got past Hijazi, Hijazi is off the track and into 8th position. Margaret, though, is out certainly behind car 33, that's Celine, and he's out ahead of Streppel. Streppel looks like he's lost a bit of time because Celine is out a couple of seconds ahead, although it's not all good news for Celine because he's got a drive-through penalty for track limits, so he goes off, coming out of the pits and into Beckett and Mackett, and that is Celine's challenge for the podium, I suspect all but done. Celine with a penalty to hand, 3rd place overall to Margaret. 3 seconds it was, and that's incredibly costly because that might not just be, it won't just be 3rd and 4th, it'll be 5th and 6th gone as well. It might well be that he ends up behind Siska. And I said about Siska earlier keeping out of trouble. That's why he keep out of trouble, because he's earned himself a place by not having any further issues. Frenton pits from 2nd place. He's earned himself an extra place by not having those issues and not earning himself a drive-through penalty. So kudos there to Siska. And Celine will be kicking himself with half the race to go at making that particular mistake. So it's not all plain sailing, as I say, for Celine. And he's got Margaret now, who's been handed a golden opportunity to take a podium position, provided he doesn't commit the same errors that Celine has. Now, Streppel, 1.2 seconds behind Hijazi, apparently, although as you can quite clearly see, he is now 2 seconds, ahead of Hijazi, having passed him in the middle sector. Hijazi driving sensibly and keeping out of the way without causing too many issues and without making it too easy. So, fair play to Hijazi. He is remaining in 8th position, needing to pit. For Hauer, meanwhile, is also coming into the pits, as I think that's still in behind to come in and serve his drive-through. So, has to be careful not to speed into the pits, otherwise it's going to be a double whammy of penalties there for Hauer. Not for Hauer, sorry, for Celine. Celine drops to 6th position, 7th position it will be behind Streppel, although when for Hauer pits and balls off into the pits, then that will be for Hauer having gotten out of the way effectively, with Celine now coming out of the pit lane. If you look at the time he's lost, it's nearly, I would say, probably about 20 seconds in terms of going through that particular complex and leaving Carp. So, disastrous there for Celine in the Aston Martin as he leaves the pit. He's way behind his teammate Streppel. It will sort itself out once ACC sector times do ACC sector time things. 3.5 seconds there. That's a real shame because that's ruined a battle that could have gone race long for Celine. He's now all the way back out in what will be 7th. He's coming out, he's about 15 seconds odd behind, 12 seconds off behind Hijazi in the Mustang, and that's going to be a bit of a recovery arc there needed from Celine. It's 18 seconds behind Streppel and a further 21 behind Margaret. So, yeah, all gone wrong there for Celine. Meanwhile, Pearl's in the pits, so someone else other than him might lead the race. It's it's Siska. He's leading the race, so he's not going to lead from pillar to post. He's not going to complete the Grand Slam there, but he might as well, because he leaves the pits, and I would suggest that that is still a good 20-25 seconds clear of Frenton. We're just seeing Frenton now come around the final corner, come around Luffield, go through the final corner that is Woodcote, and crosses the line to what will to confirm third position. Okay, apparently 1 minute and 15 seconds behind Pearl, although that will update in about 30 seconds or so, with Margaret there a further 7 seconds back. It was a good pit stop for Margaret because he wasn't quite that close. He was a good 2 or 3 seconds, I think, behind Streppel, and I think he's there. You know, he's not Streppel. He was a good 2 or 3 seconds behind Celine, and Celine was a good 3 or 4 seconds behind Frentzen. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to take you through to the end in just a couple of moments. Hello and welcome back to coverage of the European esports community. We're in the GT3 World Masters and the Porsche Cup multi-class race, of which there are 8 drivers still left in the running, with Hijazi having to serve a drive-through penalty for track limits, which means that his battle with the sole Porsche Cup representative, which is Sebastian Valhalla, is at an end with 30 minutes to go. I don't see Hijazi quite catching him as of yet, with Valhalla now in. Well, where is Hijazi? He's on that one straight. Yeah, Valhalla just crossing the line, so about half the track behind. So Valhalla, it looks like a well-executed second place to go with the obvious win in the GT Cup, or the Porsche Cup class. So what battles are there? Well, not many at the moment, it must be said, with Margaret a further 9 seconds behind. He's just lapped Hijazi, but he is 2 seconds, he's 9 seconds behind Frentzen, but he is only 2 seconds clear of Streppel. Streppel now having to pass the cooperatives at Hijazi. Hijazi there getting out of the way, going down the well straight, 1.8 seconds. Might just cost him a couple of tenths, but difficult when there is such speed discrepancy. 1.8 seconds. I think this is the hope, really, isn't it, for a battle, because Pearl is over the hills and far away. He's a good 20 seconds clear, 20.8 seconds clear of Frentzen. Frentzen, ordinarily, 20 seconds off the lead doesn't sound very good, but in this instance, we will forgive him, because 45 minutes in, and it's been a virtuoso display there from Pearl. Ever since he first started qualifying, he was a good half a second quicker than anybody else in the field, and Frentzen, having started fourth, has battled well, it must be said, to get into second place, with Streppel in particular. Celine causing issues, and as we say that, Streppel clips the curb through Beckett's and Maggots, hits the curb and spins, and that will hamper his challenge for third position. He was 1.6 seconds behind Margaret. He was catching the Ford Mustang, but alas, I think that might just be challenge over for third position. Where is he? 3.3 seconds. Well, it's cost him 1.5 seconds. It looked a lot worse than it was from a time perspective, with Siska now having pitted. He is 8.5 seconds back, so I don't think he'll be causing any issues for the Aston Martin. And we see Celine. Celine had left the pits and was third position, and that's fairly ill-timed, isn't it? Because not only has the Aston Martin of Streppel spun, but Celine is also off and into the weeds at the exit of Brooke, Beckett's and Maggots, and that is a fairly crunched-in bumper, so I suspect that he'll be needing to come in for a new order of front ends, because that car doesn't look like it's going to be going anywhere quickly. 33 seconds off the pace. It had been a good start, so he'd started second place, and he wasn't disgracing himself with Pearl, but then lost a couple of positions early doors to Frentzen. Frentzen got in ahead of Celine, with Streppel also dropping back a little bit on before they're briefly retaking Margaret before they got into a battle. Celine, meanwhile, his race has unravelled because of issues at Luffield. Certainly had a few loose rear issues at Luffield, which allowed Frentzen ahead, and then he compounded that by getting a track limits enforced drive-through penalty. So Celine, one to forget for Celine, the 33 Aston Martin. We're going to follow him for a little bit around the rest of the lap, because that car, we'll just see if he pits now. I'd be amazed if he didn't, because that car looks horrendous to drive, and I suspect he might need to come in and make that car drivable again. He's got Valhalla behind. Didn't really lose anything, I guess, by pitting, but he might then be able to set the fastest lap if he does come in for a new order of tyres. So let's see what he does here, with that car looking more than a little bit dog-eared as he comes into the pits, and yes, that will be to fix the car, although he might as well still carry on, because once it's Valhalla behind, he is still going to be ahead of Hijazi, and he will still be picking up decent points for 6th position. With, I remind you, a fledgling championship. This is returns after a long time away, and why with the championship growing, it's worth to carry on, even if you've got 26 minutes of largely phoning it in. So Celine pits, and he will go behind Valhalla up into 6th place. It's been a good drive. Really difficult to measure exactly how well you've raced when you're the only car in your class, but I think we can all say it's been an error-free drive from Sebastian Valhalla, and so you can only really say, as I say, error-free. His back end just comes around a little bit, but that's, I think, the handling characteristics of that particular car. Been error-free. He's been consistent, and fully deserves, even if he is the only car in the race, fully deserves to reap the rewards for that. So Valhalla down the Hanger Straight, and he can be pleased with the job that he has done so far. Celine's still in the pits. I suspect he will be for quite some time, with Frentzen and Pearl having lapped him previously, with Hijazi coming around the final corner to be lapped by Siska, although I don't believe that he will necessarily be ahead of Celine. I think that he's unlapping himself versus Celine, obviously with Hijazi also having to serve a drive through penalty, so for track limits, so Hijazi there now still in 8th position, causing a bit of problems to Siska, it must be said, from the blue flags, but Siska there just keeping himself out of trouble. He's not going to gain anything anyway, but someone who is gaining is Streppel. Now, we saw him have his little mini accident, didn't we? I think, yeah, Celine has retired from the pits, retired from the race, so he will be going against what I've just said about staying in the race. But yeah, difficult day for the Aston Martin. The other Aston Martin of Streppel, meanwhile, only 2.3 seconds behind Margaret. So it was 3 seconds, wasn't it? 3.3 when he had his mini accident, because obviously kicking the back end out and going sideways and off across the grass. But he's kept it together. He's got himself back into a rhythm. He's kept his tyres a little bit better. And I think this might be the battle between himself and Margaret in the Mustang. Kind of 131 is Margaret, and going along very nicely, but might have to re-engage. He got a bit fighty with one Aston Martin and Luke Prentice before they came to grief, actually at the Wellington Loop. 0.3 of a second for Streppel, and the Aston Martin is on his way. I do wonder if Margaret might not have taken tyres in that Mustang, because he's certainly getting larger and larger in the viewpoint of Streppel, and he did gain 2 or 3 seconds in the pit stops, which you wouldn't normally expect that to be that much of a discrepancy, not unless I'm one of the drivers. So yeah, looking a little bit ragged through Luffield, across the line at Woodcote, and let's see now how much that gap has changed by. It's 2.1 seconds. The straights favouring the Mustang, it must be said, in the final sector, but we will see now, with Margaret now going through the Aston Martin stronghold of the first sector and quick direction changes. Let's see how the Mustang copes, because that car still, well, it looks fairly planted, doesn't it? It just doesn't look that quick in comparison, although as he does, yeah, he's using all the right lines and using all the right places. So yeah, brings the car over to the left-hand side. It's behaving as a car should, it must be said. He's 13 seconds off Frentzen. Frenzen's away and gone. It's 2.2 seconds, so the Aston Martin not having the best of the first sector. Margaret's responding rather well to the pressure that he's been put under. We'll see how this battle develops. I hope I haven't cursed it by saying that Streppel's catching and then the gap stabilises just a bit, because we do want some action to bring to you, all who are watching the stream, anybody that is. We do want to see, rather than cars going around, we want to see some cars fighting. We saw that earlier on with Margaret and Prentice giving as good as they got, including a battle with Streppel as well. It must be said that he certainly played his part in the action, and we want to see that continue. So we'll focus on the leader shortly, who's nearly half a minute clear of Frentzen, who ordinarily you'd say 24 seconds in an hour, which it nearly is. It's I think we're 54 minutes through. Not great, but when you're as quick as Pearl, I think that's more of a reflection on him. Yeah, so second sector, 0.7 of a second, 3/4 of a second. It didn't look the happiest, the Ford Mustang, in the twistier bits, and now there's certainly going to be some opportunity for the Aston Martin if this form plays out throughout the rest of the race. With Margaret now going around the final corner, well, said final corner, the final event on the lap at Luffield, one of the most horrible corners on the grid, on the calendar, because of how long and how much you have to wait and how much patience you need. And let's see if the Aston's responded. Well, it's 1.6 seconds, so that's a good half a second Streppel's taken, albeit all of it and a bit more in the middle sector. Streppel certainly is happy to make a fight of this final podium spot. So Streppel now just needs to keep it between the lines, and let's make sure that we have no funny business like we had 3 or 4 laps ago, where he was going sideways across the grass rather than through Beckett's. Let's see now, the Aston Martin, 1.7 seconds. Gap's not to officially change that much. 1.7 seconds behind Margaret. Margaret's just about to complete the lap, so we'll see it updated. 1.7 seconds, yeah, a tenth in favour of the Fords. It has been the last couple of laps. And he goes slightly wide, doesn't he, through Stowe? It looks like he missed the apex there. So it might not be quite the advantage that he had over the last couple of laps in the middle sector, with Margaret's now trying to settle that gap down with 20 minutes to go. But I suspect he'll be looking very much rearwards through the final 20 minutes. We're going to go to the leader now as Pole. When you lead by half a minute, you kind of deserve a little bit of airtime, although with 1.7 seconds separating third and fourth being the closest battle, we can afford to leave it for a few seconds or so. 25.7 seconds ahead of Frentzen. Class of his own, isn't he? At this moment in time, Pearl, I would suggest with around about 10, 11 laps to go, probably with 20 minutes just over left on the clock. So we'll be looking at probably 38, 39 laps. I would have thought through Beckett and Maggott he goes. And let's see exactly where let's see exactly if I can stretch this out, because Frentzen, really lonely race, 25.9 seconds. So it's just peeking out, edging out that little bit more each sector. But he's almost got time, hasn't he? 26 seconds. So he's almost got time to drive through the pits, hasn't he? It is a bit of a race, Pearl, and see if you can drive through the pits and come out just ahead or just behind Frentzen. Let's see if we can have a race. I'm not sure he's quite going to do that, but I can try, can't I? 1.9 seconds between Streppel and Margaret, so it's been a better lap from Margaret, who did look like he was coming under some severe pressure. But Margaret there again, a couple of tenths on that lap just previously, with a couple of tenths the gap extension between first and second, as seems to be the case at any point these days, with Pearl leading Frentzen. Margaret still 1.92 seconds clear, 2.1 seconds clear. So that's been fairly consistent, hasn't it, over the previous few laps? Yeah, much better through Stowe for Streppel than before. He hits the apex, doesn't run too wide. I suspect then that he might be looming large in the Mustang's mirrors once again. 2.1 seconds. Come on, guys, this is the best hope that we've got of a battle going into the final 18 minutes now. So nearly an hour of this race gone. And Pearl's just lapped Vorhauer, so Vorhauer getting out of the way there in relatively short order because he hadn't spent that long ahead of Pearl. Vorhauer, obviously the leader and sole driver of the Porsche Cup class, and doing a good job with it as well, keeping well ahead of Hijazi. Hijazi, who's still about half a lap behind, isn't he? Having had his dramas in the pit stop a little bit earlier on. So Streppel 1.2 seconds behind Margaret. So I did think it was a poor middle sector from before. So God confirms that, because he's back on form now, Aston Martin, and you can see it because now he's tantalisingly close to that 1 second gap. And I suspect that Margaret is going to find himself fighting the Aston Martin sooner rather than later, because he's going to get to the point now where in the straights, so certainly in sector 3, he'll be towing the Aston Martin along. 1.3 seconds it grows to slightly, which has been, again, a fairly consistent thing. The Mustangs had a tenth in the first and third sector, but it's that middle sector where the Aston Martin has proven to be a lot better. So, Margaret, you've got to engage some, because you have got a battle to hold on to third position. Streppel now is starting to get a bit between his teeth, isn't he? As soon as you see that you're catching someone, you can get a little bit too excited. Some drivers do, but you can also, it gives you that extra tenth in some cases, and it does make you go that little bit quicker, because you can see the car ahead is vulnerable. So 1.6 seconds, he did run slightly wide through Beckett and Maggott, so I'm not surprised it's grown by 3 or 4 tenths. That's the other part, when you overdrive it a little bit. And now he's got to try and gain all of that back and a little bit more in the second sector. Winds his way through the Club and Vale chicane and down onto the Hamilton straight now, and he can see that his potential victim is right there for the taking if he doesn't make any further mistakes. Though he has been error prone a little bit, although some grass kicked up by Margaret ahead, so he's not the only driver who's feeling the pressure. So Streppel then, we'll see 1.6 seconds, we'll see exactly what the difference is for the Aston Martin. You expect to go in his favour, and it's only a tenth, 1.5 seconds. So Margaret has responded, and Streppel, you've got to work a little bit harder to catch up, because It's Margaret is not going to give this up without a fight, but Siska only 8 seconds behind, waiting to see if there's any further issues from behind. So this is going to be the battle in the final quarter of an hour. We've got Roll there now leading by 27 seconds, which went by another second in the past couple of laps ahead of Frenton, who is having a lonely race, but he's having a good, solid race. No mistakes, no issues from the Ferrari. It's been a pretty good, solid drive, and moves its way through Beckett's, Maggots and Chapel, going down the straight now, and we're expecting to see that this is again grown just a little bit. So 27.4 seconds again, fairly consistent, 0.2 per sector for the moment, with Margaret's there 1.5 clear of Streppel, and it doesn't look like it's an awful lot different. So Streppel actually had a decent final sector, didn't lose any time to the car ahead, has lost a little bit of time, 0.2 per second to the car ahead in sector 1. Again misses the apex, getting a little bit ragged is Streppel here, and I think that might just give Margaret's the advantage in the battle for third, because it's not the first time that Streppel's made these mistakes. If he can just keep it in the lines and not get too giddy, not get too excited, I think there's third place on. But Margaret's tough customer to pass, as we've seen before. Really do have to get your elbows out with him, and it's something that Streppel is not going to get the chance to do if he does continue to make a couple of those little mini errors, those 1%ers, as he makes a little bit more of an error there, goes slightly wide through Farm and onto the grass, and that won't help the Aston Martin's cause. With 14 minutes left, about 7 laps to go, I suspect that Margaret's might have this covered if he continues to go. It's 2.1 seconds now. It's grown by nearly half a second all told this lap. So Streppel, poor time, bad time really to have a poor lap as he is, with Margaret there just keeping it fairly consistent. We'll go to the Mustang, because the Red Mustang has done a really good job starting from 5th. He's not really put a foot wrong, including even in battle with Luke Prentice earlier. I called it maybe in favour of Margaret's there, but we'll see a little bit later on. Don't think anything's going to come of it with Prentice now out of the race. And 2.1 seconds. Let's see what it is across the line. Looks a little bit bigger, doesn't it, if anything? It is 2.2 seconds as they cross the line. And Streppel there losing a second relative to a couple of laps ago, and that might be fatal in his chances of getting third position, provided that Margaret doesn't make a mistake. So, back into the lead we have Pearl. 27.6 seconds now clear of Frenton. It's a difficult one for him to lose from here, you would have thought, as he's just stroked his way over the hills and far away. He's not really been troubled since the earlier part of the race, really. He's not really had any issues since, I'm going to say, perhaps turn number 2, turn number 3 of lap number 1. Certainly the Ford Mustang has swept all before him going into the previous hour and 3 minutes, with Frenton really, I was about to say perhaps the only challenge, but he hasn't been, because he's been consistently dropping back by about half a second to a second per lap. 30 laps we are in. Lap 31 we're at, and it's 27.7 seconds, and it's a respectable job from Frenton. I've said this before, you see that you're 27 seconds, 30 seconds off the lead, you think, it's not great, but when you're as imperious as what Pearl has been throughout the race, I think you have to doff your hat and say actually that Frenton's done a rather good job, and you can see that by the fact that he is 16 seconds clear of Margaret. Margaret's there 1.9 seconds clear of Streppel. Streppel responding a little bit in the previous lap, but it's got to do it consistently, otherwise the challenge is going to go out of the window. Although someone who isn't going away might just be a little bit too late, but he is starting to catch up at about a second a lap. It's Siska, because he was 8.5 seconds back. He's now 7.5 seconds back. But that might be Streppel's mistakes, but Siska is starting to move. So 5th place he is, and a respectable 5th place it is in the BMW. He's certainly not been giving up when he had dropped back a little bit further back behind Prentice, Streppel and Stalin a little bit earlier on. And Streppel there 2 seconds still behind Margaret. Margaret not going to challenge for second place and is starting to lose out. So this is going to be the battle, provided that Streppel gets his act together, because 2 seconds it is now, the Aston Martin. As we see now, Margaret down the Hangar Straight in the Red Mustang. pulls the car to the left-hand side because you want to be able to brake as late as possible, have as late a apex as possible. So it's a good job there. It does misses the apex just a bit. Strapple's dropped 0.8 of a second, 2.8 seconds that gap now is, and that's going to be difficult with about 5 laps to go, 6 laps to go, as there currently is, because what will be 10 minutes and 45 seconds. I would suggest that with Pearl going around the final corner, that is 6 laps to go, although there is a good chance he could slow up and, well, what are we? He's 28 seconds clear of the lead, 29 seconds clear of Frentzen. He could probably slow up on the last lap and win by 5 seconds by dropping 20. I'm not sure he will, because it's not how drivers work, but he's certainly got that option to do that, should he wish. But that's the measure of the dominance, and that is also a measure of how much longer we don't have left to go, because 32 laps it is, with a further 6 laps to go. And Frentzen now in second place. He's doing a good job. He's come across the line half a minute behind, 29 seconds behind, and he's 16 seconds clear of Margaret, with Streppel having only gained a 10th in the second sector, where the Aston Martin had been stronger than his opponent. And I think Margaret might just have this clear, although we hope that that's not the case, because we want to race. Siska's 7.5 seconds back. I don't think he'll be a factor on Streppel, even if he is starting to catch up, as we mentioned just a few moments ago. 22.6 seconds between Streppel and Margaret for third and fourth, with Siska there 7.5 seconds back in fifth position, with Sebastian Vorhauer in sixth. The sole, I must say again, the sole representative of the Porsche Cup class, which means that he'll be the only driver scoring points, which means that he's the winner. But in sixth position and doing a respectable job in a car that's 3 to 4 seconds a lap slower than the GT3 cars around him, he's doing a really good job of staying, not going to say within touch, because he is quite far back off of Siska. He's, I would say, looking at this, he's probably about 45 seconds off the back, but he has kept Hijazi at bay. He's going to beat Hijazi, barring any issues, and he's bound around where other drivers wouldn't, so fair play to him. There's a lot about him as he goes around down the Wellington straight. We'll stay with him just for a little bit, because I do want to see exactly how far back he is. I don't think we'll see that until he crosses the line with Siska there, car 291, just going through Abbey Farm, and with Porsche just kicking the back end out just a little bit. So it's 2 laps off. I'm not sure that's quite the case. It doesn't feel like it'd be 2 laps off that particular place, but let's see as he crosses the line, as Siska now goes through the loop. As we see there that Vorhauer is crossing the line. He may well be a couple of laps back, but still a good job done indeed by the Porsche. As I say, 3 to 4 seconds a lap slower. It is very difficult over a minute and 15 to stay with the GT3 cars. Meanwhile, in the GT3, the battle for P3 is Streppel versus Margaret. Streppel 2.4 seconds back, starting to make a little bit of a comeback. Is it too little too late as we go now to start with just 4 laps to go potentially? 2.7 seconds off of Margaret. Margaret 15.5 seconds off of seconds. He won't be challenging there, but he's started to look, dare I say it, just a little bit more comfortable in third place, because Streppel hasn't made the impact that he threatened to make not even 10 minutes ago, where, you know, he was 1.2 seconds back. He made a couple of errors, tried to get back within, couldn't quite get back within, and now we have a situation where Margaret and Streppel are now fairly status quo, aren't they? 2.7 seconds at the start of the lap, 2.6 seconds barely between the two drivers now, with 6.5 minutes to go, plus anything that gets added on with Pearl now still in pole position by a long way, going through Brooklands, and the Ford Mustang there. I think this will be 4 laps to go if he continues at this pace, because it's 1 minute 58 lap there or thereabouts, and there he is with 6.5 minutes to go. So you would suggest that that is 4 laps to go, unless he does decide to take a breather, and he could, to be fair. He's 32 seconds, nearly 31.4 clear of Frentzen, who's doing a really good job, I say again, but nobody is in the same league as Pearl throughout the 75 minutes, the hour and a half really, if you count qualifying, that we've had so far in the European Esports Community GT3 Cup and the Porsche Cup multi-class season that we're now doing with Season 6. This is, even if it says Season 6, it's very much a fledgling league as they're trying to resurrect this, having not been able to get it off the ground for a good few months now. It's something they're trying really, really hard to do, and it's something they're doing rather well indeed. So you've got round 3 at Silverstone, which is where we're at now. And this is, I think, the halfway point of the set. I think there's a further 3 or 4 rounds to go. We'll go through that a little bit later on. 34 laps in the books is for certain. And Fredson there now just coming to finish the first sector, so we'll get a reading on the gap. Streppel, meanwhile, has dropped back to 3 seconds behind Margaret. So you would suggest with 5 minutes plus that is done and dusted. There's Margaret does hit dramas. 32 seconds the gap now between Pearl and Frentzen. Frentzen doing a really good job to keep concentrated, really, because you drive around not really seeing an awful lot for a good 45 minutes he has done, and he's kept his pace relatively good, and he's 16 seconds clear of Markovic, who has not been a slouch himself, with Streppel now 2.8 seconds behind. It's again a little bit too little too late. He's gained a 10th in the first sector, so you would suggest that that is all done and dusted. Siska, meanwhile, still making a bit of a fist of it. As soon as I say that, he makes a complete mess of the club chicane by hitting the inside sleeping policeman, the sausage gun they have there. But he was gaining another. Well, he had gained another second over the preceding 2 or 3 laps. He was at 1.8.7 seconds back just 5 or 6 laps ago. He's getting 2.5 seconds, but it's not going to be enough because 4 minutes to go, 4 laps to go, just depending on where the leader is. 35 laps in, so I think we are now 3 laps to go territory, unless he does decide to slow up, which I remind you he can, with Frentzen still not having crossed the line on the 1:58 lap now. So, he can pretty much do what he wants, Pearl, I would suggest. So, Margaret said still 2.8 seconds ahead of Streppel. Streppel not making an impact in the Aston Martin's former stronghold of Sector 2. With the Mustang having pulled out gaps in Sector 1 and Sector 3 historically throughout this race, I think that's it done and dusted now. 3 laps to go for this battle to hopefully prove me wrong, because it's now 3 seconds. Streppel, you've got to get your skates on. If you've got anything left to go, get rid of it and get after him, because we want to see a battle for the final podium spot. Margaret doesn't. He's 3 seconds clear, and why wouldn't he want to? Why would he want to see a battle? Why wouldn't he want to scarper away? You don't really want to have too much stress going on, and that's exactly what he has avoided. So, Frentzen there, 33.5 seconds back off the lead, and easy street there for the Ferrari driver. Car number 720 has been impressive, it must be said. Understatedly so, would have been a pretty deserved winner had we not had somebody of the class of Pearl in the race. So, coming round the Brooklyn, so the third to last corner, going into Luffield now for what will probably be the penultimate lap to start their 2.5 minutes of racing to go, plus obviously racing to the end of that lap, whichever that may well be. As he goes across the line, you need to slow up by about 25 seconds, and that is a hard old thing to judge. So, Pearl there, going through Cops Corner, and going through to the complex there of Beckett's and Maggots, and completing what is and has been an imperious victory. Frentzen there, 34 seconds behind, has driven well, and there's been no match, with Streppel now 3.5 seconds behind Margaret. I think we can call time on that particular battle too. 6 seconds behind is Siska to Streppel, so Siska perhaps not going to make it a battle for 4th, but still an impressive drive for the BMW. Had a few dramas earlier on, and of Sebastian Vorhauer in the Porsche Cup, the sole remaining Porsche Cup car, who had the track all to himself in qualifying, but has nonetheless done a very good job in the race. He's got Frentzen behind him, so no funny business, please, chaps. Thank you very much, with 2 laps to go as they begin to finish that. We've lost a couple of drivers, Shalene in the Aston Martin and the Apprentice in the Aston Martin, for different reasons. The Apprentice had a drive-through penalty and then had an accident, so was had to retire. And that was the same story for Shalene. The track limits penalty after getting out and doing the hard yards in terms of getting out into third position before then a track limits drive-through penalty almost immediately scuppered his race, and an accident there a little bit after serving that penalty where he went front end in. He had a pit stop there which would have lasted 2 minutes to fix all of that damage, so bad luck there for Celine in the Aston Martin. But we still have 7 finishes to go out of the 9 that started. We're going to go now with Pearl, and is he going to slow up? I don't think he is, so I think we're going to go into another lap, an extra lap, to hope to see if we can get a battle, although I think the battle between Margaret and Streppel is done and dusted. 24 seconds ago, leader is on the final lap, and let's see if we can follow him through, because it's been an excellent performance from Pearl from start to finish. He had half a second on the other drivers on the entire field in qualifying, and that is a difficult thing to achieve inside 10 minutes where you've got 3 or 4 laps at best around a 2-minute track. Never really troubled because he had nobody near him from pretty much the get-go. He had a little bit of a drama with Celine at the start, closed the door on him almost instantaneously coming out of the first corner, and from there it's been easy street. He's been consistently a second a lap faster than his competitors. Frentzen has just about started. He's just come out of turn 1 and he is the next car on. He's just got past Valhalla, and we'll see how that gap has grown to prove. But as he goes through now, Vale, down the Hamilton straight for the final time, it's Pearl who's on easy street. I reckon he could probably get out and push it if he so desired, because of the gap that he's got going into what is the final sector in just a couple of quarters time. 37.5 seconds over 37 laps. It's a second a lap that Pearl has been able to pull out, and that is imperious form that nobody can argue with. We're going into the final sector now for Pearl down the Wellington Straight. This is going to be a really remarkable performance, provided there are no dramas in the final 3 corners. Through Brooklands we go, brake as late as possible, late apex, just stroke it round, don't do anything funny going into Luffield. Looks all very peacefully through there, and Pearl is going to come out of Luffield over the line through Woodcote to take one of the easiest victories you will ever see. That is an excellent performance, domination from Pearl over the line, over the rest of the field, and that is a 75-minute stroll in the park in Northamptonshire for Pearl, and that is one of the best victories you'll see anywhere on Assetto Corsa Competizione, because that is 38 seconds, I will make it, by the time that Frentzen comes around to finish second. It's been a creditable performance from Frentzen in the Ferrari. He started 4th, he's gained 2 positions and fought well for those 2 positions, did a lot of good work on lap 1, and then when the Aston Martins fell by the wayside, he was there 38.6 seconds behind, and I can't find fault with that drive. Sebastian Valhalla crosses the line to take the victory as the sole representative in the Porsche Cup class. It's Margaret who's going to hold on for 3rd position when at times that looked under threat in the Ford Mustang. Battles with Celine, Streppel and Luke Prentice. Luke Streppel is the one to come across the line, with Luke Prentice and Celine having crashed out earlier on. Philip Siska crosses the line in 5th position, 4 seconds off in the end, and a really good performance from that BMW. Wish that you could find that performance a little bit later on. We've got Hijazi now coming around the final sector there, the league founder, and whilst it looks like he is behind a slower Cup car, and that is the case, it must be mentioned that he's not hardly been on the game in the last 2 years, and this is a performance to be pleased with there. He's kept going when other drivers have not kept going, and that is a mark on him in terms of trying to get the league not only off the ground, but also in terms of a never giving up spirit. He's improving week on week, and I think we'll see a little bit better from him even next week, or next time out in a couple of weeks' time, over the line at Woodcote, and that is 7th place there for Bobby Hijazi, with Celine, as we can see there, 15 laps down, and Luke Prentice there, who was in the battle for the podium, having gone out about 45 minutes ago. So there's your order. It's Pearl in first ahead of Frentzen and Margaret to complete the podium, with Streppel, Siska in 4th and 5th place ahead of Sebastian Valhalla, who's 6th overall, and first in class. Bobby Ajazi in the 6th position in class and 7th overall, with Celine and Luke Prentice there to round out the finishes. With your commentator, I've been Jack Prentice. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Take care, goodbye, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.